Okay, everybody knows that we're in, this is sort of an engine repair class today. And the classes are sort of gerrymandered, but I want everybody to get some, soak up some of the stuff I'm trying to say here. And what I always have to do every time whenever I teach some of these things is I got to recognize that not everybody knows the same stuff. Some of the stuff, you got the idea that you already know, but I'm going to shoot you into a little engine repair stuff this time. But unless an engine's got a rotary, unless a car's got a rotary engine in it, then you basically are going to have valves. Now, why doesn't a rotary engine need valves? Like in a Mazda RX-7, RX-8, Lightning in a World of Thunder and all that, you know. It's got two rotors in there, no pistons, no valves. Now, in the, I think in your Electude in engine repair, I believe there was a module I put in there on rotary engines. If not, there was, did you see one? But it shows you how those things work. I used to work on them when I was at the Mazda dealer. My rotary engines are weird, but if you've ever driven one, you're thinking, man, why would anybody want a piston engine? Because of the way the thing does. I mean, it just feels like it really wants to just get right out from under you. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they can spray nitrous in them little motors. The little rotor motors are made like 1,015 horsepower.
Yeah, it's astonishing what kind of horsepower you get out of a rotary engine. But anyway, as it is, we're using pistons and we're using valves and we're using a spinning shaft with index-shaped lobes that opens the valves. Now, does the camshaft open and close the valves, or does it just open the valves? What closes them?
Springs.
The springs do. That's right. So that's not hard. So the engine's basically a big breathing machine. I told you before that on a 3-liter engine, if you could capture all the air that comes out the tailpipe when you turn it 2 full turns, you're going to capture 3 liters of air. That's at 100% volumetric efficiency. But because the air is going in here and making curves and all that, you're not going to get 100% unless it's a turbo or a turbocharged or supercharged. All right. Well, T-model cars had a lever on the steering wheel for ignition timing. What would happen if you didn't retard the ignition timing starting a T-model?
It wasn't current.
You would break your arm. When you went to turn that crank, it would kick back and it'd break your arm.
Did some of them have starters on?
No. But whenever you, now, not in the 20s. Now, what we did here, we would move that lever. See the spark advance on the left side? One of those was in the Lincoln dealership when I was over back in 1984. And Bobby is an older guy than me working on it. And he was trying to fool around and figure out how to start it. And I said, Bobby, you've got to retard the timing on this thing before we start. And as I thought about that, I don't remember where I learned that. But I knew it. I said, that lever on the steering wheel retards the timing. I just don't remember where I learned it. But anyway, so you use the lever to retard the timing to start the engine, then you advance or retard it as needed while driving. When you advance it, you get a little more power up to a point. Cam timing remained consistent for almost 100 years. So, yeah, we report, you decide. There was a girl that came in here one time and she was driving a little SUV of some kind. And she came in for some little minor repair. And while she was, it was a Kia, it seemed like it was a Kia Sportage or something. Can't remember, or some kind of an engine, one of them Asian SUV. And I said, I'm hearing the timing belt slapping the inside of the timing cover. We need to put a timing belt on this thing because if it jumps, it's going to, you know, cause you some damage. And she said, well, okay. And so I ordered a timing belt and it came in and she never came back. And I sent the timing belt back, got credit for it. And about 6 weeks later, she came back and said, I was turning in at Walmart about 6 weeks after I talked to you, or well, about a month after I talked to you. And the timing belt jumped and it bent the valves and it cost me $1,500 to get it fixed. I wish I had listened to you and let you put a timing belt on. All right, so this kind of thing kind of happens. Now this is the head that came off this engine. You notice what happens is, on some of these little Asian engines, like Kia Cephias and stuff, if they jump time and valve starts kissing pistons, the head snaps off the valve, and I've seen this on these cars that come in here, and it just beats the ever-loving crap out of everything. Destroys the head, destroys the engine. I mean, you just got to put a motor in it. That's all there is to it. All right, so you got a freewheeling, free spinning, and interference. You know, the freewheeling and free spinning is pretty much the same thing. So that back in the early 80s when Ford started building the Escort, it wasn't a freewheeling engine, and they fixed that really fast. Like the second year they made it, they fly cut the piston so that there's no way they could ever hit the valve. And so your interference engines will hit and non-interference engines won't. Trouble is, you're not sure which one you got in some cases unless it happens to be a Kia, a Mitsubishi, or one of those, or if it's got a timing chain, it's pretty much always one. Here's one that I saw. This people sent me an email through my website. It says they're driving down to Florida from North Carolina when our 2004 Kia broke down. It's a Rio. The timing belt broke and the entire engine needs to be replaced. Now that's on the up and up. We still owe $7,000 on the Kia. My question was, would you advise thinking it under $3,000 into the Kia with 90,000 miles? What would you tell them?
Well, we're gonna have to pay the $7,000 either way, so that might as well.
May as well put the 3,000 in it and drive the 10,000 out of it, huh? But here's the deal, and I didn't put this big enough where you could read it, but you inspect the timing belt at 60,000 and 90,000 in California and at 105,000 miles, but Kia recommends the timing belt be replaced at 60,000 mile intervals on non-California vehicles. In California, and I think California has some sort of a law about it shouldn't cost more than a certain amount to keep a car going or something. I don't know what the deal is there. One way or another, they had put 90,000 miles on a car. They'd gone 30,000 miles beyond the timing belt replacement interval. Okay, so that was a dirty hand that was dealt to those folks. Now, pistons and valves are doing a dance in here together, and everything has to happen just right. The camshafts are always spinning at 50% of crankshaft speed, so the crankshaft spins 720 degrees for every 360 degrees the camshaft spins. And camshafts aren't easy to spin. Let's see that one here. Hey, Timmy, what's going on? I didn't mean to, sorry. All right. Apparently my phone is malfunctioning. Anyway, the camshafts aren't easy to spin. You ever put a wrench on a camshaft and turn it, and it goes dum, 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 dum? You know how I'm saying? It's not a smooth turn. It's not an easy thing. So the gears and the chain and whatever turns it have also got to turn it the same way. So how they're driven is tailored for that hard and easy and hard and easy, because every time it opens and closes the valve, you know, it's going to be hard. And that causes, if it's using gears that have any lash, then they make a racket, something terrible. And when I used to work on these Volkswagen Bugs, the early Bugs back in the eons ago, there were like 11 different camshaft grinds. There was a 0, and then there was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus, and then there was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minus with slightly different cuts on the gears. And what you had to do is you had to find the one that didn't have any lash at all, so that when you put it in there, there wouldn't be any of this, because it would make a racket. And people don't like listening to a racket. The racket wouldn't hurt nothing, just annoying. You want the engine to be quiet. All right, now then some of the other ones that did it, well, let's go ahead and do this quiz. When the piston's going down, which 2 of the 4 strokes might be in progress?
Intake, power.
Okay, so with the intake, and we're going to put that in A, is the intake valve open or closed?
Open.
Is the exhaust valve open or closed?
Closed.
When it begins the intake stroke, both of the valves are open. Remember? What do they call that? Overlap. It's to purge what's left of the gas out. I mean, of the burner, of the exhaust gas out. And on the power, intake valve is open or closed. Both of them are closed there. And in the very beginning of the intake stroke, both of them are open. Matter of fact, if you can find the point of overlap by watching the rockers, you can tell that that cylinder is on top dead center exhaust. Just begin its intake stroke. When the piston is traveling up, which 2 of the strokes might be in progress?
Compression and exhaust.
Compression and exhaust. The intake valve open or closed on compression?
Is it what? Exhaust valve or intake?
Either one on
They're
compression.
closed.
They're both closed. They got to be closed or you would have no compression. Intake valve open or closed?
Exhaust.
Exhaust valve is open if you're in exhaust stroke. That makes sense, doesn't it? All right. Now, this is one of the things that I never really understand the nomenclature for it. They call this overhead cam, because you got the camshafts up here, and the one that's got the camshaft in the block is called overhead valves. Where's the valves? on every engine, overhead, right? But when you talk to the people, as a matter of fact, some of the people that think like I do will call this one a push rod engine, because it's got push rods. But a lot of them, like if you call a parts store, they'll say overhead cam or overhead valve. Don't get confused by that, because overhead valve means the camshaft's in the block, like on Zane's truck. And
They're all overhead valve.
exactly, but that's what they're gonna call it. If they say overhead cam or overhead valve, don't try to correct them, because they're gonna think you're yo-yo, because that's what their book says, okay? All right. So just be aware of that whenever you're talking about that. So there's your overhead valve styles, and there are more than this. You got this kind right here. What is this? What kind is this right here? What does that look like?
5-4.
Crown Victoria 5446 and all that. What about this one here?
4.6, 4.54. It's got the 32 valve.
Yeah, they'd be like the Saline Mustang with that motor that's got the two guys' signature on it that built it at the plant. You know.
You know they make a 5.4 like that?
Yeah. It's a stood in a monster. All right, then it's right here. Basically, you got a dual overhead cam. Now, is that little Toyota out there the one? How many of you guys have done the timing belts on the little Toyota engine that's on the stand out there? Is that dual overhead cam or single overhead cam?
Same
Is it? You ever had the valve cover off one of them? Got two camshafts in there. And they're geared together about this far back in there. We've got a scissor gear that's spring loaded to do away with this noise. And the camshafts turn opposite directions on that one because they just got that one gear. Right? All right. Okay, now, driving a camshaft requires a connection. All right, now, this right here you've seen before, right? You ever seen that? I'm surprised that you haven't seen that at Matt's. Because a lot of the times people will have a kit, they'll take this off and put that on.
Why?
Because they don't have any stretch at all and they want to direct the gear. Now that's noisy as all get out. But these hot rodders like to put that on there because it's, you know, a more solid connection between the cam and the crank. This one right here is a little 2.5 out of a Cavalier or something, the old Cavaliers. And the teeth on the outside of this are not, well, they didn't start out as steel teeth or anything like that. They were a sort of a phenolic stuff, and they would basically bust off and the car would fail to start. And some of the 2.8 liter little Mustangs, Mustang 2s had that too. This right here will have a gear in the middle that basically has a bunch of different timing marks on it, kind of like this one right here. And see, you've got timing mark here, 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 and that gear in the middle is basically what lines all that up. And these are exotic vehicles. The ones that I've worked on that were like that one in the middle, basically was running on an idler, and it was a Perkins diesel forklift engine. They had a big cover on the end.
I was about to say, they only use that's mostly like machinery and stuff.
Well, you'll see it on some vehicles too. Now, it won't be anything you're going to be working on over here probably. You'll see them in Europe. They do that kind of thing. And there's your timing belt system right there. Now, this is the difference between, you got this silent type chain, which is laminated, and then you got a double roller chain, which stretches less. Now, has anybody seen a double roller chain recently on any vehicle we've worked on in here? That 91 F-150 that Zach McLeod put the timing chain on had a double roller chain from the factory. That's where they started putting them in there. Because this kind right here has a tendency to stretch. I've seen them on a Dodge pickup truck where they had low engine vacuum, late cam timing because that chain had stretched so much. And one time this guy that I knew had bought, he actually came from South Carolina or North Carolina down to Texas, and he had this 70 model Ford XL with 390 in it. And I was going to buy that 390 and pull it out of that junky old car he had and put it in a pickup truck. I was building an engine for a guy that had a Ford pickup, and he had a 360, and we were upgrading him to a 390, and I was going to put, you know, get it bored, all that stuff. But anyway, I said, I need to start this motor while it's still in the car to see if I can, you know, see how it sounds. And so we jumped it off and got it started, and I did the Jonathan Price thing and revved it up more than I should have and all. Anyway, and whenever I let it, you know, come back to idle and all and shut it off, I took the timing cover off of it, Might have been after I got it on the engine stand, I don't remember. But when I took the timing cover off, the timing, all of the nylon was going off the top timing gear, and I could literally take the timing chain off with my fingers with it. That's how wore out it was, but it was just flopping. You know what I mean? And those were really bad to do that. These, not so much. Huh? The what? Oh, yeah, go ahead and reset that. We changed the oil, but they didn't reset it. They were second rate amateurs, huh? Yeah, go ahead and bring it back tomorrow, we'll finish this question, okay? Yeah, go ahead and change it. I mean, did they put a different sticker on it or no? Y'all didn't put a sticker on her, Pearl? It makes us look bad. All right. Well, bring it back tomorrow, we'll clear it up. That's it, made us look bad. So you did put a sticker on it, right?
We put a different sticker on it.
The one on the dash, did you reset where it said the oil percentage? Oh, okay, all right. All right then.
Ours is really bad too, ours is really hard, like that much back and forth.
Yeah, you just flop it around. I mean, if it's one of them kind, it stretches something terrible. Sorry about that interruption. All right, so you got gears, belts, and chains. So what's the difference here? This one here is a timing chain, that's a timing belt. What does this one need that this one doesn't need?
Guides,
That's one thing.
oil tension.
Yep. Well,
With some
they
of
don't,
the-
yeah, they'll
Some of the
typically,
timing belts have got oil tension on.
well, yeah, but they'll typically, it'll be like a little hydraulic tensioner. I'll show you about that in a minute, but it's not driven by oil pressure. You know what I mean? Now this one right here has got these long nylon slides right here. And it's got a-
They also need oil.
They got an oil that pushes, yeah, they gotta be lubricated. This one here doesn't have to be lubricated. However, the one I showed you guys on the GDI engine has got a timing belt that swims in oil. You remember that last semester? Anyway, then those stupid nylon sliders, they like to fail.
How does the oil not break down the belt
But it's got a belt that's non-breakdownable by oil. Well, you can make that rubber do anything if you put it together with the right stuff in the polymer. But I mean, it swims in oil, the one on some of the gasoline direct injection vehicle. All right, and I don't know which ones it is exactly, but we looked at it last semester. Chains can be a good thing because most timing chains, not all of them, but most of them last the life of the vehicle. Most timing belts don't last the life of the vehicle, although some of them will go 100,000 miles. Timing belts fail if some drive locks up. If any of these pulleys lock up, or if you got a water pump that locks up, it's going to destroy the timing belt. Now, most of the time on a Mitsubishi, when the timing belt jumps, it bends the valves and destroys the crank sensor. So you wind up having to have a $100 crank sensor and you got to do a valve job and all that. But general rule of thumb is if it has a chain, it'll bend the valves if it jumps time. Now here's a little brief story. This guy said his timing chain jumped on his GMC pickup truck, bent all the valves. That's unusual, isn't it, for a V8? And I found out after I talked to him, I said, how many miles that truck have on it? He says, well, the speedometer broke at 385,000. So I don't know how many miles it had on it. And I started talking to him some more, and this guy, I found out, had changed the oil in that truck every 1,500 miles since it was a brand new truck. Think about that. It went a long way, didn't it? All right. If it's a belted Toyota or a Ford, it's usually free spinning. If it's a belted Kia or Mitsubishi, it'll bend the valve. And there's other ones that will. You just got to find out. You got to know what the truth is about the engine you're working on. Don't ever turn the engine backwards, even if it's got a timing chain. You know, one of the things that I always like to say is, what's at stake? If I turn this thing backwards because I thought it'd be aight, and it turned out it ain't aight, then I'm going to be doing a bunch of free work. See what I'm saying? Or the shop's going to be paying for a bunch if I'm working on salary. So don't do that. Don't turn it backwards. Always turn it forward. Remember what Zach and them did last time? Turn that engine backwards, and it it jumped time. You don't want that. And this one guy up there at the school I went to said that they kept getting engines that didn't have any compression, and when he went to watch them pull the next engine out, they were turning it backwards to get the torque converter bolts loose. And that's what they did with every one of them. And I think those were 5.4. You know, with the salvage yard. All right, replacing the timing belt when it hadn't jumped time, you pull everything off, all the coolant tanks, covers and all. Rotate the camshaft till the mark lines up and check to make sure the crank lines up. When you line these cam marks up, this one will be lined up. When that one's lined up, that one's lined up. But you can line that one up, and these may be here or there. They may be 180 out of line because this one turns twice as fast. So always use these to be the ones you're gonna line up. When you line that one up, that one should be lined up, and that one should be lined up. If it's not, cat's on the roof. Now, the first step, that's the first step when you're checking to see if a belted engine is jump time and also replacing a belt that isn't. Now, some chains require special tools. We got these tools. I got an engine out here. I got a worksheet I give out where you guys are supposed to set the timing chains up on one that doesn't have any marks. Some of you guys have done this that are in here already. You might recognize these tools. All right, and it'll take more than one pair of hands if it's a 4-liter single overhead cam Explorer with 3 timing chains and no marks. He's holding this in the back while he torques that shaft in the front that drives both the mother chains. Hey, what you looking for?
Maybe Robert.
Oh, he's in welding over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of buildings over.
Pretty good.
All right. All right. So that was, this was out at Donnie Hughes' shop whenever there was, he had them 2 guys, Ben and Matt were there, Matt's still out there. Matt actually went to school here, and before he went out there to work with Donnie. All right, these are tensioners here. That tensioner right there on that one was actually a bad tensioner, and it was sticking sometimes, and and it's oil filled, but what would happen was because it was sticking and it wasn't working right, it was causing a timing chain noise. And so we put that on there. Now this one right here turns out to be a video. I showed some of you guys this video, but it's always good if I can get it to, if I can get my back up. All right, you see that timing chain, that off-driven tensioner? You know why that happened? It's making all kinds of racket. Now that one over there is not doing that so much. This one here was. And the reason was because the guy that put the timing chains in there, it happened right out here, the guy that put the timing chains in there, there was a piece of foil they put on the back of that timing chain tensioner, and he didn't take that foil off before he mounted the tensioner, and the foil wouldn't let any oil into it. And so and we wound up having to, it had little ratchet teeth in it that were messed up, and we wound up having to put another one on it. All right, now this one here, whatever you see, if you grab that and you see that moving that easy, and that's what was going on that little Mazda. If you see that thing moving that easy, that is junk, and that's going to make a rattling, popping noise in the valve cover, I mean in the timing chain cover. So be particularly aware of that. Now that thing, that tensioner that you saw me mashing, looks like, well, this one here is just one variation of it, but it's one of those, you got to push it in with a vise. You don't push it in really fast or you can damage it. You give it time to go in. This is a remote cousin of the springs that open your hood. You know when you got the hydraulic pistons? That thing right there is really, really strong. And when you stick it in there, you got to put an Allen wrench in there or something. You can't stick a paper clip because that won't hold it. You put that pin in there. When you mount that back in there, then you pull the pin out, and that takes care of the, letting that thing come out. And you let it come out and tension the timing belt. Some of them, which is one like we just saw in that, and it was bouncing a while ago, are this kind. They got a little ratchet mechanism. You can push them in with your hand, stick a pin in there. Some of them have got a little dog that goes onto some teeth. You can see how it's going to work. All right. Now the timing belts that are too tight make noise. And for this, I'm going to need some noise. All right, let me see if I can find my mouth. Hear that racket? The reason it's making that racket is because the timing belt's too tight. So if you hear one sounding like that right after somebody's put a timing belt on it, you're going to know the timing belt's too tight.
What you got, Ranger? Dan's over here with that truck I called you about Monday.
All right.
Where you wanted to set it?
Set it out there, find a parking place and set it out there, and then I'll make a work order.
Okay. I'll come back after lunch and sign the work order.
All right. All right. Okay. That one there wants to kind of keep on going. Let me go next one. All right. Make sure that you double check everything. You see anything wrong with this picture right here? See the colored link? See the mark? is one tooth out of time. What's this right here for?
And then another mark, when you come all the way around, you can go where it's supposed to be.
That goes by the cam
the
sensor, it's the cam sensor zone. All right, you see the mark on that one? That's a 2003 Camry. Really hard to see, but there's a little teeny tiny arrow right there. And this one's out of time too, because see that colored link right there? That colored link should center up on that mark right there. All right, make sure to use the right mark. This one right here, on that Toyota, like that Camry out there on the stand, it's got a mark right here, and it's got a mark right there. It looks to me like that this mark right here should be the timing mark, but it's not. Okay? This is a good little trick when you got a dual overhead cam you're fighting with and this thing keeps moving around. When you get this thing where it's right, you put one of those on there, it ain't going nowhere. And we've done that before and it works really well. Turning the engine through 2 times when you're done, double check all your marks. A lot of guys that I know, if possible, will start the engine with the cover off. If they can. Now if the crank sensor's reading off of the pulley that's on here, you can't do that. But they'll just go ahead and crank it up and see how it does. See, you're looking at your marks and all that. Route all your wire harnesses properly. One of the most common problems I've seen whenever somebody's inexperienced, when they put a timing belt on, they'll do everything right, except they won't pay particular attention to the wire that's going down to the crank sensor. And what happens then is the timing belt cuts the crank sensor wire and the car comes back in on the hook because they didn't route the crank sensor wire right. And they didn't figure it was no big deal because they did everything else right, but they figured that piece of wire didn't mean much of anything, so they just kind of slammed it down through there any kind of a way. They figured it'd be aight, you know what I'm saying? All right, so, and that is the end of the slideshow. All right, tell me something you learned that you didn't know when you came in here.
That motor right there is a
Route.
overhead cam.
Huh?
That motor right there is a
Dual overhead cam? What'd you learn? You learned something.
I also know by how they say, it's not overhead cam, or it's not a push rod motor, it's an overhead valve.
Yeah, they call it an overhead valve. What about you? You learn something? So you didn't learn anything. So you need to watch the whole thing over again on YouTube. Okay, what about you? You learn something?
Use the mark to time it?
Huh? Yeah, Mark, yep. What about you?
I did a drive, but not that
Huh?
valve.
Say it again?
It's called an overhead valve, not the
Yep. What about you?
That trick to put on the belt.
Huh?
That trick to put on the belt.
Yeah.
All over.
Yeah, that's handy. All right.